You're listening to I Love It When, and I'm your host, Mo. I'm a speaker, coach, and connector. You're in the right place if you're looking for some inspiration and you're ready to truly embrace who you are. My intention with this podcast is to help you see that you are so much more powerful than you realize. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of I Love It When. I'm your host, Mo, and today I'm excited to introduce you to a friend of mine named Royce Wilson. Royce is someone that I met through a friend of mine, Deanne Wilson, who was a real estate agent out of the Keller Williams Bothell office, where I was for about 8 years. And totally random part of the story, but I'm going to include it because that's me. I had at one point heard Deanne talk about and mention that she had seen an angel before. And so it was probably like a year later where I went up to Dee and I said, Dee, I heard you say this once, and can you come over to my house for dinner so that we can talk about this? And she said, absolutely, sure. And she ended up bringing her husband, Royce. And as soon as I met Royce, I felt this deep connection and electric energy around him. And that evening, they came over for dinner with my partner, Tom, and we sat and we talked and we swapped stories. And I remember thinking and feeling like, wow, this is the first time I've talked to a pastor about my spirituality and the spirit world, and talking about angels and the unseen, things that we can't sense, that we can't see with our two eyes. And I had never felt so heard or seen before. And there were a couple things also that Royce said to me about my journey that were definitely signs and messages for me to keep going, which is a really big deal for me. If you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, you know that I talk about signs and messages that I receive. And Royce definitely gave me a message that evening that has kept me going in my business and just helped me so much. So when I found out that Royce was leaving his position in ministry, where he's been in ministry now for 30 years, to start his own company and become a coach and a teacher and a guide in a different fashion, in a different way, but I was super excited and I knew I needed to have him on the podcast. So here's a little bit about Royce from his bio. I'm excited for you to meet Royce Wilson, a seasoned wonder guide with experience spanning over 30 years, dedicated to coaching, teaching, training, and empowering individuals on their path to realization of their potential. Royce's deep-rooted passion for adventure, coupled with his avid mountaineering pursuits, reflects his belief in the transformative power of wonder. For him, wonder is the catalyst for progress, the magic that fuels the next step. Residing with his family near the mountains in Monroe, Washington, he continues to adventure while guiding others to embrace wonder, embarking on their own extraordinary journeys of personal growth. So in this episode with Royce, I wanted to give you a bit of an outline of what we cover. We talk about what it's like to step out into the unknown, where there is no certainty, and how you actually have more control when you release control, in a way, talking about surrender and trust. How we're constantly being brainwashed and thrown, and all of these messages, thousands of messages a day about what we're lacking in order to create that urgency in us to purchase something. The power of the brain and our ability to connect to our higher self. And then why Royce felt pulled to leave the ministry after 30 years and step into being a wonder guide full time. So Royce and I could probably have our own podcast and talk for days on end about so many different things. And so this episode is going to be a 2-part episode because we were definitely in the flow. So I hope you enjoy, and I would love to hear your comments, your feedback, your ideas, and just what your take is on our conversation about the power of wonder. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of I Love It When. I am super stoked today to get introduced you to a friend of mine. I don't even think I'm going to talk so quickly that my words are all just going to mash together. Today I have my friend Royce Wilson on the podcast, and I just can't wait for you all to hear our conversation. And who knows really where it's going to go, because there's so many different avenues we could go down. So Royce, why don't you start just by sharing a little bit about yourself and your background?
Well, thank you, Mo, for having me, and hello to everyone. Obviously, as she said, my name's Royce Wilson. Where do you even start, right? I've been in ministry for 30 plus years. I spent 17 years traveling pretty extensively around the US and even international. I had 2 part-time gigs at churches during that 17 years. And then in 2010, I came to the beautiful Pacific Northwest and took a struggling, AKA dying church, and with the plans of resuscitating it, relaunching it, building a vibrant community. I've done that for I did that for about 12 and a half years, and then resigned in March, feeling drawn into a new direction. And so I am launching that, and it brings me to today. So that's a quick overview of kind of where I've been, but loving coaching, teaching, training, equipping, inspiring, helping people grow is just what I've devoted my entire life to up until now.
I love it. So tell us a little bit about what brought you to being a pastor in the first place. What brought you to the church and to preach?
Really, a really good question there. So I was raised in the South. So I'm from, if you can listen to this, down there in Texas. I was, it's so funny. It's like, I worked at REI for a little while too. And everyone's like, where are you from? You always hear the, where are you from? But being raised in the deep South, my family wasn't particularly religious, but I just grew up in and around a church. It was Pentecostal by denomination and experience. So that forms a lot of the way you experience reality or whatever. That was my community. That was my understanding of things. And so I did feel from a young age this deep calling, this wooing, there's a purpose to my life, but not just I'm going to build a great business. It was just this deep purpose that I'm here to help people. And so you would tend to, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, as we go forward, you tend to interpret these wooings and callings based on your understanding at the time. And so all I understand it through was the church and the system, the religious system I was a part of. And that translated to, well, I must need to preach. I must need to pastor. That was the way it was presented. And I have no regrets there. But so in answering my call, it needed to include some kind of preaching, pastoring, traveling, inhabiting the pulpit, lecturing in some capacity that inspires people. And if you know anything about Pentecostal style preaching, it's extemporaneous and very, very passionate. So if anyone does happen to Google me at any point, there was a history of that as well. Yeah. So that, in a sense, I would be honest and I know this is taking a little while to. It's okay. But I would say it picked me, but and I want your audience particularly, to hear that we don't pick it as much as it picks us, but in it picking us, the calling, the wooing, the purpose, we tend to interpret it based on our understanding at any given time. And that's okay. That's okay. And so I did that up until this point. Even the last 12 and a half years pastoring, I felt that to be an extension of what that was supposed to be. And now I don't. That's changed. That season has evolved. And I feel like the way that I'm to live out that calling now, as almost 50 years old, is more deeply nuanced and understood than I ever have before, because I'm at a place to be able to hear it and receive it as such.
It's such a great place that you've created for us to jump off of, because one of the reasons I so deeply wanted to share you with my audience is because I've talked about on my podcast, one of my episodes, I went through part of my journey with religion and spirituality and kind of where I am now. And what you said about kind of just having this calling since you were very young, I've absolutely felt that. And it's a calling that has a lot to do with just a deep love and caring and passion for people. And it's undeniable. And so like you said, it's like however you were raised and whatever you grew up around is kind of that lens through which you see where that calling might lead you. And I know that a lot of my audience members, whether they're spiritual or not, people can resonate with that calling. So tell us a little bit now about, you left that position as a pastor to start something new, and you're calling yourself a wonder guide, which I love. I love that so much. And I wonder if you could just share a little bit about what that means to you.
Well, just a little bit of background on the whole Wonder Guide thing. I think
Yeah.
it's worth mentioning to our listeners, to your audience, that we're not going to be set up for success if we don't come from an established sense of identity. Who am I? And I realize I turned 49 this year, back in April, and I just realized that I have been living so much of my calling, my desire to help people, from a sense of still being overly attached to what people perceive me to be or
Mm.
what people need me to be for them. And this is a very nuanced, balanced thing, because at any given moment, we can volunteer willingly and generously to be something for someone that they need.
Mm.
That we need to make sure we leave room for that. That's generosity. That's helping. That's service. Become what is needed for the moment. Now, if you stretch that out over a long period of time without a healthy understanding of who you are, you will lose yourself in the decades. You will lose yourself serving. And I did. I completely, utterly lost myself, put the deeper longings in me on the back shelf, and wait, serve in some weird, naive sense of it'll all come together, it'll all work out. And maybe it does. Ultimately, I want to say that, yeah, it really
Mhm.
does. But the process could be more painful than it needs to be if those who have walked the journey could tell you in advance, like, let's spend some time on being authentically true, or at least understanding and then being authentically true to who we are. So I know that took a little while, but
It's okay.
what I want to share is I would go out. So I love to mountaineer. Like, all this stuff this is real ropes, real climbing gear, all this. So I love to go out, and I love to be surrounded by this stuff when I'm working. So this is I call it the adventure room. So the whole idea is I would go out and I would be in meditative prayer, and I just love this, being out and outdoors and just talking. And so I'm like, what am I on this earth for? What do you have for me? And I'm just interacting with God, and from my point of view and my experience, and I just am curious about, like, what am I on? And I would hear, and then we'll get into intuition and listening to the spirit and all that, but just a
Yeah.
little preview to that.
Yeah.
I I would just hear wonder. And I found it so peculiar. And this has been going on for at least a decade plus. Wonder, wonder, wonder. What? I'm on this earth for wonder. And I'm like, you're gonna have to help me with that. What does that mean? I'm on this earth for wonder. What is that? Like, I just felt so weird. It's like, I'm on this earth to do this thing, to speak in front of people or to chop wood. I don't know. We are inundated with a performance based sense of trying to relate to who we are, and
Mhm.
we are more than that. That is the foundation. I would love to tell everybody, you are more than what you do,
Mhm.
and your identity is not limited to what you do or don't do.
Mhm.
Like, and of course you want to do things in alignment with your identity, but we need to know that, and that thing is more transcendent and deeply founded in more than just our behavior or our performance. So long story short is I would hear wonder, and I'm like, what is that? And this is how I heard it, because I really just kept spending time just soaking in this thought. And it came to me that you are on this earth to experience jaw-dropping, eyes big as saucers wonder. I'm like, well, shouldn't I be building like a church, or building this particular charitable ministry? Or, it's like, that's how our brain works. And it's
Yeah.
like, it just began to fundamentally shift my whole, that I was to just experience all. And I'm like, that's it. And it's like, no, no, no. You are to guide others into a
Mhm.
place of this kind of experiential wonder. And there's a lot of ways to do that. You can climb a mountain, right? You can
Mhm.
stargaze, or we could talk about things like we're talking about today,
Mhm.
and experience that. So once I began to, there's a mixture in me resigning from pastoring, effective in March of this year. And I'd say it's a mixture between deep burnout and the
Mhm.
divine wooing of step into the fullness of who you were meant to be and what I have for you. And with that, I would just say that the burnout for a lot of us, you may, if someone's listening and you're in that place, there is infinite amounts of grace for us when we are aligned and deeply connected with what we're meant for and that
Mhm.
identity.
Mhm.
And I wasn't. I was just trying to serve, trying to do what was expected of me, doing good things, helping people, trying to serve, trying to even present Christianity in a way that's unique and distinct. I'm really frustrated with the political landscape, the
Mhm.
stereotypes of what Christianity is. All of that just frustrates me to no end. And so we did good, but at the end of the day, it wasn't really connected to who I am and what I'm meant for. And
Mhm.
so the bill comes due. And as it come due, I know I can't continue to do this. And then here's this alignment opportunity with what's been in my heart all along. And
Mhm.
I would just encourage someone today, you might be at some type of intersection like that. Don't
Yeah.
curse that intersection, and don't, I know it's hard, but it could be the greatest opportunity that's ever happened to you to get
Mhm.
off the conveyor belt or the carousel of what everyone else expects of you or what you've expected of yourself up until this
Mhm.
point, and then get in alignment, discover who and what's inside of you, and then get in alignment with that.
Mhm.
Everything else will fall into place.
1,000%. I'm so glad that you spoke about that. About we talk about burnout a lot with different guests that I've had on the podcast because
Mm.
I think that what you just shared about when you realize that you're not in alignment with what your true self wants, with what your soul is craving, then you, no matter what you're doing, whatever industry you're in, you slowly burn out. And I think people really resonate with that.
Well,
Yeah.
there's nothing really filling the tank back up from
Hmm.
a cosmic infinite source. If you were a line, like take wonderguide,
Hmm.
that's what's imprinted on who I am. And there
Hmm.
is an infinite reservoir of energy to begin to operate out of that. And every human being has that outlet, that plug that we can plug into. And it's a hard journey to realize that, wow, I'm running off batteries. I'm not actually plugged in to
Yes.
an infinite power source. And then we, our illusions about ourselves are just shattered when the battery runs down and we're like, what's going on? Why don't I have more energy? Why don't I have more juice? And it's,
Hmm.
I'm running off a limited power source. And
Hmm.
you might do well for a time. You might even get really successful. You might find financial success, but
Hmm.
ultimately that bill will come due. And it did for me.
Hmm.
So close. And here's the thing too, I'd like to say, so close in so many ways to what's really inside of me, but not getting to touch and associate with its pure essence. Like it would be like 10% of what I did
Hmm.
was wonder guiding.
Got it.
It's not enough to charge your battery. It's
Yeah.
not enough to charge
Yeah.
you because you've got
Yeah.
this 90% drain expenditure, and that
Hmm.
eventually catches up.
I love that you said that too, because recently I think I've been experiencing, and I told a friend of mine this, I never really understood or felt what it was like to be supported by the divine until recently. And the
Wow.
only reason that was because of just what you said, because I was pushing so hard to be what others expected to me to be or what I thought I was expected to be, that yeah, my battery, I never got that constant flow of support because I never really allowed it. And so now that it's almost like I'm being forced into this place to completely surrender and trust. And now I get to experience it. I'm like, oh, this is what I've been missing for so much of
Absolutely.
my life. It's a very different feeling.
Oh, it's amazing. And
Yeah.
I love it. And if I can, I just a quick story that illustrates this beautiful.
Yes.
It's in the book of Ezekiel. Ezekiel is this really cool prophet that sees so much of the divine that he actually is called Son of Man over and over and over in the story. It can be kind of peculiar if you're not familiar with it, like Son of Man. What does that mean? Just basically is a way of saying, hey, human, human, hey, human. He sees so much of the heavenly spirit realm that heaven needs to constantly remind him, you're still human. You're still human. I think it's really cool. You're still human. Hey, human, you're still human. So
Still human.
and we're in this paradox, right? To where the spirit world's available to us, but we have a human life and human condition to live and interact with. So it's a paradoxical tension that we live in, and that's okay.
Mhm.
Well, okay, back to the point is he sees a vision of a river coming out from the temple, and this river flows out, and he feels to measure it. So he goes out 1,000 basically meters or cubits in the day, and he goes out and it's waters to the ankle. He's like, so it's ankle deep. And he's like, let's go another 1,000. And then it's waters to the knee. So the river's getting deeper. Goes out another 1,000 and it's waters to the waist. So he goes out another 1,000 and it says it was waters to swim in, a depth I could not pass over. And then he stops measuring. So there's just this beautiful illustration in that for me, that I think most of our life is wading into the divine, wading into this spiritual place. And that it's really neat if in the Hebrew, when you read it, it calls the first sounding or the first measurement, actually, literally, it's ankle waters. Some of us are in ankle waters, and that is absolutely okay. But the curiosity is when will you desire to measure again? When will you wade anymore? Will you wade out anymore to see? And now here's the big grand point I'm trying to make. The more we wade, the deeper the immersive reality gets, until we tap into another energy system, another source of propulsion for our life, the current of that river. So that fourth sounding, it's so deep, I can't touch bottom. And that's where the shift happens between Royce being in absolute total control of every single thing in his life, being able to trust that I can be carried by love and this divine power, this divine energy. Now that is terrifying, right? Because now the current, the current can utterly have its way with us, which I think is the destiny for every human being. We're all on different journeys. I don't want anyone to feel pressure. I just want to feel, I want you to hear an invitation, is that where could we explore today that deepens our interactive reality with this cosmic, beautiful thing of God's love and God's river.
It's so funny because you remind me of something that my boyfriend Tom's been telling me lately. Sitting in that unknown space where it is terrifying, your feet can't touch the ground and you're just letting yourself go with the flow. He's like, it's kind of like you're out in the middle of the Atlantic and you can't see shore yet. And he said, you're just in the middle. It doesn't mean that shore is not coming. You're definitely headed in the right direction, but you can't stop just letting it go. Just keeps like letting it flow and float with you. I love that description that you gave because it's very real.
And one more little, I love that too. And it's such a, the thing, and do you know that everything we're saying is also very wonder-based terminology too? The ocean. And we'll get to this as you desire, as it needs to pop up. But the ocean, the Grand Canyon, the starry sky, these are huge things that we see ourselves in perspective of. And that's really that catalyst and foundation for wonder. Something like a big river with a strong current. It's bigger than we are. That's the invitation of wonder, is to not be afraid to step in and align with that which is bigger and greater than we are. Now, here's the catch with that. When I initially experience it, it seems overwhelming. It threatens my sense of control. And what that is my sense of control, what it offers me. So if I'm touching the bottom, I can tell the current how much it can have of me. But it gets harder the deeper you go, right? So ankle waters, you're in absolute control, but you're getting wet. You're wet, you're experiencing it. Knee is starting to slow you down a little bit. You're like, you ever tried to run through knee deep water? It gets harder. And then wastewater is like, you're really being impeded, but it's only really half of you invested in where that could go. And if you get scared, you can get back to shore. And I think that's where, I think it's a picture of how a lot of us are trying to explore and interact with, how much do I want to let this have me? But then this is beautiful. He's measuring. And I think we measure things and we don't know why we're measuring it. He just says it was a depth I couldn't pass over. I think there's something in that. Ezekiel likely was like, I wonder if I can get across this. And if you've ever, a big river, can you imagine the pioneers trying to go west, coming out here to the Pacific Northwest and just seeing a river? Like it's like almost a death sentence. It's with no bridges and no ferries, and it's hard. And so the idea, I think if we aren't careful, we still have an assumption that if I could just get over this, when really the invitation from the divine is get in this
Mm-hmm.
and let the current, which is so much more powerful than anything. How much could the Mississippi River lift if you put it in the weight room? It's like,
Oh
it's almost
gosh.
unquantifiable.
Yeah.
It's significantly stronger than I am. There's our wonder. Do I want to get in alignment? And then here's my grand point with this little segment here is
Mm-hmm.
that's offering me a new definition of what control is in my life.
Mm-hmm.
It's empowering me. And when I align with the river and I get in my little floaty and just chill and just let it carry me, I'm actually safer than I've ever been, more powerful than I've ever been,
Yeah.
more in control than I've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
If I can just surrender the fear that makes me want to cling to the bottom. The bottom is my level of what's safe, when really there's a new definition of safety if I can just trust the
Mm-hmm.
journey and the process to it.
Mm-hmm. You're using the term wonder really resonates with how often I use the term curious and being curious, and how curiosity, somebody told me the other day, just a few weeks ago, that curiosity is a sign of the divine. And I was like, I've never thought of that before, but it truly is. It's comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of, yeah, wanting to go all
Yes.
the way in.
Yes. Well, and I as we move into maybe discussing intuition or listening to the spirit, I think it's really important. Curiosity is every bit a part of wonder. There's a thing with the when we allow our baseline to be curious, it combats and immunizes us from worshiping certainty.
Mm,
Or, and by say worshiping certainty is that a lot of us get our security from being certain.
mm-hmm,
But if you shift your identity, that you can have your identity fully formed in curiosity, which means you're open to a new experience. You're
mm-hmm,
open to learning. If I worship certainty, then I'm moving towards that narcissistic bent that I'm always defending what I already claim to know about everything.
yeah.
Instead of, oh, okay, I'm up for this new experience. I'm up for checking this out. I wonder where this river goes.
Mm-hmm,
I wonder why the stars are aligned like that tonight, and
mm-hmm,
that opens us up to more of what's possible. And I think the fundamental place there is it all about Royce, or is there something even bigger that Royce harmonizes with, a grand design, something to where the world doesn't have to be perfectly made in my image? And I think we're all
yeah.
battling that,
Yeah.
meaning that doesn't diminish me. It's like, I think it gives me even more value when it's not all about me.
Mm-hmm,
And yet it can be all about us coming into a flow together that's accomplishing something that benefits everyone who's a part of it, instead of just the
mm-hmm,
elite or a select
mm-hmm.
few.
And
Curiosity is the
do you
path
think
to
that's
that.
where, like, that desire for certainty? I mean, I think every human probably has some journey with that process of realizing that you can't be certain about everything. But I also feel like that has definitely been pushed from a place of power and greed, and uh, people who want more power, more greed, more money, more
Yes.
things. Yeah.
Yes. Well, there's such a deep psychological need for certainty, but that's a part of our development. And what are the things we can be certain of? Well, I can be certain about curiosity.
Hmm.
You see what I'm saying? It's
Yes.
where are you attaching your current understanding or trust in certainty? I'm going to be certain. This is my faith. I'm not projecting this on anyone. I would invite you to consider it, but I'm certain that I'm going to be provided for. I'm
Hmm.
certain that God, the divine, is the ultimate provider. I am certain that the river is a better way for Royce to travel than me paddling or walking the bank. And so my certainty is actually shifting. But because I'm certain in the curious journey of wonder, I'm much more open and flexible. And I'm not needing to be certain about my control or my performance. And
Hmm.
that's where we begin to shift our identity at that point. Is reality about all the things that Royce has to do right for it to work? Or am I provided for? If I can, just a classic, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day. Like this whole idea that I'm going to be provided for, that I'm safe. I am safe. And see, we're told, I think it's over 3,000 impressions a day on average, and I think it may spike to 4,000 or 5,000 based on some studies. 3,000 to 4,000 marketing impressions a day that are leveraging some version of fear or inadequacy or scarcity. We are being brainwashed all day, every day, to believe that we're not going to be taken care of if we don't buy this product, wear this clothes, use this thing this way. And I think a lot of people are really waking up to that. And we're shifting certainty is what we're doing. Certainty from my need to make everything happen a certain way according to my idea, to a certainty that, you know what, today is going to have exactly what is needed for me to accomplish everything that I've set out to do. And if I heard one quote, I love it this way: good prayers never come limping home, for I shall receive either what I asked for or what I should have asked for.
Oh, wow. Yes.
So it's this idea, when I live in this state, this meditative state of trust and confidence moving forward, some of the things I ask for may not be exactly how it happens, but what happens, I can be flexible to enter into it instead of letting my disappointment, frustration keep me from enjoying that twist in the plot, and just let that story unfold.
So then you moving into starting your own business and leaving your job as a pastor is truly you stepping completely into the flow, right? Without no touching the ground. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've 30 plus years in ministry, and I don't mean, whoever might listen to this who's been under my leadership, I don't mean any offense by this. I'm just putting it out there, and no edits, just leave it out there. But yeah, I have no desire to pastor in the mainstream. I am deeply still in love with Jesus, love following Jesus. I find so much hope in Jesus and the teaching and the life and all of that, but have no desire to lead in mainstream Christianity at all. But I have 30 plus years leading in mainstream Christianity. It can be terrifying, and I'll be quite honest, it has been. It's just like, 30 plus years in ministry doesn't translate to the corporate world, nor do I want to be there.
Yeah.
But it's like, and I would say it this way, Mo, it's like, this is my prayer. This is my intimate confession of vulnerability. I've prayed so many times. I'm like, God, how many times do I have to start over? It feels like my life has been one sequence of losing control, what I thought, to trust what is, and it's always been better than the thing I had in my mind about it in the first place. So what you're saying is, yeah, this may be the deepest I've ever been in the river, but it feels so amazing. It feels so awesome. And I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm going to be able to focus solely and primarily on that which makes me alive. That which I feel like I'm on this earth to do. That's a privilege that I don't know how it's all going to go, but the thing is, I'm going to see it all the way through, because I don't have any other choice than to align with this wonder guide identity that is in me, and share that with the world.
Yeah. The next thing that comes to my mind to ask you about is the thing that I've noticed that I've had the hardest time with in terms of releasing this control and realizing like I don't have control. But then I actually do have more control when I just let myself flow with it. None of it's my timing. So like the timing that I would normally have as an overly prepared former executive assistant would be to have everything 6 months in advance. And I've had to release all of that. The timing has nothing to do with what I think is right. And so my human brain has really struggled with that part of, am I going to have the money I need to pay my bills coming up in 5 days? And so I'm wondering if you have any insights into how you've dealt with that so far, or what that struggle has been like for you.
Well, the struggle's real, in the sense of like caring for my family and wanting to provide as I can. My wife, Deanne, she is amazing, and she's a go-getter too, but my own sense of what it means to care for my family. And so we can get these conflicting values. It's right. I could have justified whatever this sense of helping take care of my family to keep me in a place that was killing me. And no reflection on any person, but being where I'm not ultimately meant is a death sentence. And I would say for us to continue to cling to paychecks. Now, listen, I want to be very practical. There's no doubt a long season and area where we may have to really work through something. So don't feel that, this statement is like, you need to quit right now. But we need to come to grips with, is this a long-term viable solution for me to keep giving my life essence in a way that I'm suffering, and not suffering in a good way? But we'll never know if we don't wade into the river. We'll never know if we don't give it a chance. And so with that said, I combated that for the longest time, and the fear of not being able to make a living probably is the hardest part of this whole thing. And it's probably what kept me much longer, because I've got so much time invested in ministry, which I don't regret at all. It's just, it becomes this type of stuckness. And I think it happens in a lot of different fields and occupations and jobs and positions. You just get stuck. And just to kind of key in on the Christian part of it for a minute is I read a book I took a sabbatical as I was trying to figure all this out. During that time, I read this book. It was called Stuck. And it's two sociologists studying clergy. And what they have found, I mean, there is an epidemic of this happening right now in Christian circles specifically, to where the work of your office, your position, your job is actually alienating you. And that's the word they use, alienating many pastors, ministry leaders from the thing they feel called to do. Now, isn't it funny that I think it can happen in real estate. I think it happens so many things that somewhere you wake up in the job and realize the thing that excited you when you started is not what you're actually doing at all anymore. You're doing something else entirely. Now, what would keep you there? Well, status, that's important. Like, goodness, man, I'm going to look like, a quitter. That was the thing. I don't quit. I don't quit at all. Anything, it's like, if I'm climbing a mountain, it's like, I don't care if it takes 3 days, I'm going to get there, safely and wisely, but I just don't quit. So this idea of my own pride, I don't want to be perceived as a quitter. How am I going to provide? All of that just kept me stuck until I reached a point to where I could not afford, emotionally, spiritually, logically, could not afford to stay in a place that is not in alignment with my dreams. I only have so much time left in my life, and I would rather spend it risking, leaping, and seeing what happens with what is in my heart, which is to guide people through, guide growth through wonder. And to me, that's that little bit of fear is a lot less the emotional toil and expenditure. So I'm experiencing a little bit of like, okay, we're not sure how this is going to go, but I'm going to give it my very best. That is so much more emotionally inexpensive as where I was probably the last 5 years. So I'd rather see where it's going to go. And I have no doubt, based on every point in my entire life, that it will ultimately end up where I need to be and where I long to be and where I dream of being. And I don't have to force that. I can rest that the river's wanting to go there, even if it's better than what I thought about it in the first place.
Yeah. I see that so much in so many people that I talk to, that what you said a little bit earlier, I can't remember your exact phrase, but when you're doing that work that you don't really want to be doing and you're paying a price physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, spiritually, I see people just get so depressed and so in this deep dark hole that they can't really figure out. Like, they know they're not happy, but it doesn't make logical sense to leave that job or leave whatever it is that they're doing. They can't take a step because it's not logical, because it's not rational, because it's not what they've been taught how to do. But I've seen a lot of that get jostled up too with COVID and with a lot of more time for introspection. I think people are coming to realize, and through people sharing their story, like through you sharing your story, I think it helps people to understand, hey, I'm not alone in this. Other people have experienced this, and look what other people have done to get out of it. And they haven't died. Like there's opportunity there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there is grace and provision and goodness. And that's the thing that we are saying about reality. Reality isn't all, and we can talk, because I've been really studying some of the leading brain science on some of these things too. It's like logic and reason is coming primarily out of the left hemisphere. That's our conscious mind. We've been having this conversation primarily out of the left hemisphere. Well, the right hemisphere, and there's a late 70s, early 80s misconception that some people are more left brain than others and some are more right brain. That's actually not true at all. We're all left brain and right brain. Okay. What we've learned about it is that the right hemisphere of the brain is all pre-conscious. So like, I'm talking to you because I'm concentrated. If we aren't careful, this becomes another illusion about control and what our life is all about. And we're just living out of our conscious mind. But there's a right hemisphere that's doing a lot of processing before you're aware of it. And now this is really cool. We use words, thoughts, logic. This can be focused on the left hemisphere. It's good for problem solving. The right hemisphere is 360 degrees. You can't focus it. It's nonverbal and it's pre-conscious and it's a faster processor. Yeah. And this is where I think, and again, I don't have the pure data. I don't think anyone does yet, but I think this is where we begin interacting with a higher mind, even than our own, is in this place of pre-conscious. It's where our gut instinct kicks in. It's where, but here's the thing I want to say is all the nerve endings that come up your spine, they go right. They don't go left. They go right. So everything you're experiencing is being filtered through your pre-conscious processor. Logic, five cycles a second, that processor. Your conscious mind. Your pre-conscious mind, right hemisphere, is 6 cycles a second. So it's a faster processor. It's not focused. It's looking at 360 degrees. And Mo, guess what? Its language is not words, but faces.
Faces.
It rolls through the people you are attached to. That's how it processes. It's looking at your tribe, your people. And that's the thing. And I know this kind of opens up a whole nother can of worms. It's like, who am I close to? And this is the thing that we've really got to look at. Our technological advancements, they promised us we'd be more connected, but what it's done is it's isolated us a little bit more, but it's begging the question of, who am I close to? Who am I connected to? Who am I having meaningful conversations with? Who am I exploring the river with? And that part of us is even more fundamental than the logic and the reasoning when it just comes to how our brain works. Our brain first will cycle through, who are my people? Who are my close connections? And it'll ask a question. Again, it's nonverbal, but the way that they would interpret the way the right brain perceives reality, it's, how do I bring joy to those faces? And that's how we think about reality at the deepest part of who we are, is our relationships and whether or not I'm bringing joy to those relationships. So the character of a human being is founded in, I don't want to disappoint the people that I love the most. Everything else is a layered problem-solving mechanism. And so we end up living out of our left brain, reason and logic, and we're not even paying attention to what they've discovered in the last 20 years. We are deeply relational creatures. And I believe the invitation is that there is a huge cosmic mind that would love to interact with us, that would love to talk to us, would love to provide, and is providing for us, and we have all the tools to interact with that. But we've got to suspend that conscious logic addiction. Yes. I didn't say throw reason out the door. Please, no one did not say that. But we have an addiction to our conscious mind while ignoring, there's been a whole lot of processing before you become aware of it. What if we trained and developed and just fed that part of our mind and thought about that part of us? Because it's tricky. you can't, it's not your conscious mind. So how do you do that? Well, we just work on relationships.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of I Love It When with myself and Royce. Because Royce and I could talk all day about this topic, I've decided to split our episode up into 2 different sessions. So the rest of this conversation with Royce will continue on the next episode of I Love It When. See you soon.